Dear friends, hello, my name is Anastasia Zueva. I am an expert at the Scientific and Educational Center of the company Scientific Publications. And today we continue our series of interviews with contemporary researchers. And I would like to welcome our guest, Gulnoza Ismailova, Doctor of Law, Professor, and also Executive Director of the El-Yurt Umidi Foundation, which is engaged in training promising personnel under the President of the Republic. Uzbekistan? By the way, our guest is also a recognized expert in the field of constitutional law, as well as educational diplomacy and decentralization. There are simply so many titles here. And by the way, Gulnoza is also the author of numerous scientific works, which we will also discuss today. So I am very glad to see you. How are you feeling? How are you doing?
Thank you very much. I am very pleased to have this opportunity to talk about my favorite topic, about science, about scientific research, about what is happening in the world right now, about how the new Uzbekistan is changing and how we are working in this direction. Thank you for the opportunity.
And we are very glad that you agreed. And by the way, after listing all your titles and how much you do, a question arises. First, how do you manage to do it all? And second, in general, how did you come to science? And why did you choose jurisprudence in particular?
Well, thank you very much. I would say this is still just a small part of the journey. It is my sincere desire to do much more. And I would truly like to be more represented, because I firmly believe that science is the fundamental driving force in life. This field helps not only in terms of academic growth, but it also serves as a vital tool that assists us to be an active part of those state reforms and the complex system of globalization that we see in the world today, especially with the incredibly rapid and dynamic advancements in science. I would like to say that I came to jurisprudence. It all started as part of a meaningful project that I was involved in during my youth, and it was through that experience that I entered the field of law, which served as my introduction to the legal profession, not just by chance, but with the desire to be a participant in reforms, a participant in ongoing processes, someone who is involved in the processes of international relations, and in a very certain sense to be part of the ongoing development of the state. As you may know, Uzbekistan officially became an independent country back in 1991. And this entire process, it felt as if we were collectively growing up, I would say, becoming a new nation. During this period, during this very challenging time, and it was precisely science. It was science that truly led the way. Fundamental human rights and the establishment of statehood. That specific moment served as the primary impetus that eventually guided me toward the field of jurisprudence. Speaking of science, while I was developing as a lawyer, at that time it was the Tashkent State Law Institute, which is now a prestigious state university. After completing my bachelor's and then my master's studies, my professional and academic path continued forward. I had to choose whether to go into legal practice or to develop specifically from a scientific perspective. I would say that the key factor was that my parents, coming from a strong scientific background, that also became the main impetus that encouraged me to pursue science. And it seemed to me that through scientific methodology, it would be much easier for me to find that specific path I was looking for. The path I am striving for, that is constitutional reform, the constitution, public administration. This led me at the time to the Academy of State and Social Construction, which is now the Academy of State Policy and Administration under the President of the Republic of Uzbekistan. It was a truly great, absolutely remarkable school that I laid down as the solid foundation for everything that I have successfully achieved today.
Well, that is truly impressive. And you mentioned your deep-seated scientific interests, and in general that your entire family is also deeply connected to the world of science. If you look back now and carefully analyze your scientific interests over the last 10 to 15 years, how exactly have your specific areas of interest changed? At some point during that time, did you distinctly develop an interest in any brand new fields, so to speak?
Yes, if I look back and think about exactly where I first started out, I would honestly have to say that my scientific beginnings actually started during my master's studies, when we were also writing our master's thesis. That was, something truly fundamental and foundational at that time. That was the beginning of my scientific career, I would say. At that time, it was a very relevant topic. The topic was the liberalization of public administration. And entering this field, it seemed to me that I really wanted to focus on liberalization. And I think it was very good advice from my academic advisor at the time, who told me to first find the source. What exactly constitutes the liberalization of public administration? So when I first entered this professional field, reading and studying both foreign literature and the practical situation in Uzbekistan at that time, the early years of the 2000s, I realized that at the very fundamental core of this entire issue lies citizens' self-governance. That is, for us, it represents the most autonomous and independent link. But at the same time, it possesses the fundamental nature of statehood and is the most directly accessible to citizens, to people, and to society as a whole. The body was an organ of citizens' self-governance. If you look at the system, these are self-governing bodies and they exist around the world. But from ancient times in Uzbekistan, there has been the historical institution of the Mahalla. And as I studied this issue, how it exists, how it was formed, and how contacts can be established between society and the state, I came to the conclusion that all state reforms, as we can clearly see even now, for example, even our president pays special attention specifically to the institution of citizens' self-governance. That is to say, this is being achieved through the ongoing reforms within the state. He still continues to turn towards society, which is the most immediate and direct institution that actively works to address those accumulated state problems. These are tasks that need to be solved to remain in step with the times. But yes, I can also say that when I began my research on citizen self-governance, it later drew me into the decentralization of state administration. Also, while working within the public administration system and in personnel training, the topic of human capital was always relevant. At that time, I was teaching public service at the Presidential Academy, and I was drawn in specifically by the system of public service itself, as well as the overall development, the adoption of the law on public service in the Republic of Uzbekistan, and also international relations. I would say that today it is quite challenging for me to call myself exclusively a legal scholar. My area of expertise has become much more interdisciplinary in a certain sense. At a certain stage of life, I also developed a deep interest in international relations and diplomacy. With my transition to the University of World Economy and Diplomacy, these interests broadened significantly and reached a truly international level. Here, the various factors involved in training diplomats became my primary area of research, which also greatly helped me with the Fulbright program. There, I conducted my research on the training and retraining of diplomatic personnel in the United States. Currently, I work mostly with young people, focusing specifically on the development of human capital, on the tasks set by the president, and in general, all of my scientific research has, of course, been within the framework of reforms in Uzbekistan, meaning administrative reforms and constitutional reforms. They shaped my perspective. I don't even know which was greater, whether the ongoing reforms in Uzbekistan shaped my interest, or whether my interest tried to keep pace with the reforms taking place in Uzbekistan.
So in a way, there was a kind of natural symbiosis taking place.
I wouldn't say that when young people claim that science is detached from reality, no, on the contrary, it should be integrated. In other words, it's practical. It's about what is happening on a global level.
That
right now such reforms are taking place in the country. And based on this, you choose a direction that is more applicable and can be implemented in those studies that you are involved in.
And you mentioned that you are currently conducting such an interdisciplinary study. As far as I know, you have also written scientific papers on gender balance, specifically in politics and diplomacy. How would you generally assess, for example, Uzbekistan's progress in this area? What has changed since you, for instance, started your career and now?
Thank you. I truly believe this is one of the most urgent issues facing us today, at the present time. And for example, I frequently use my own personal experiences to illustrate the significant ways Uzbekistan has undergone transformation in recent years, especially since our head of state first assumed leadership at the end of 2016 and throughout the years that followed, specifically in the area of supporting women. And this is not just in terms of their human rights, but more as active participants in social and governmental reforms, as well as their growing role in public administration. To illustrate this, I would like to use my own personal example. For many years, I worked in the field of science. And for many years, I was actively involved as a professional expert in various commissions and reforms, as well as in groups responsible for the creation and development of various laws. But today we see women being involved in various fields. This focus is primarily centered in education because, of course, when we talk about fundamental reforms and the overall development of the state, education is at the very heart and core of the entire process. And from this perspective, we can clearly observe that in today's world, if we examine the current statistical data, the increasing presence of young women in education, specifically in higher education, is both at the undergraduate and master's levels. The state support provided to our young women shows growth. Today, specifically in higher education, the presence of young women has reached 54%. This is
Wonderful, and it cannot help but make us happy.
also, one of the most fascinating statistics to consider is that women who are over 30 years of age, the percentage is over 60%. This speaks to the gap that existed initially, and how much government financial support has helped young women who could not study to continue their education at the master's level. They received the state support that helped them, even over time, to secure these state grants and continue their higher education. The participation of women in management structures and the support specifically tailored for our needs. The political will demonstrated by our president helps us believe in ourselves, to believe that we are now participants. These political reforms also give us confidence in equality and in the guarantees of these equal rights in public administration. I believe that this is essential, is also what inspired me to write academic papers, specifically within, for example, the same field of diplomacy, about the participation of women diplomats in this structure, about support. In today's world regarding political processes, likewise, the participation of women in political parties, their involvement. You see, today Uzbekistan has improved its rankings in many indicators, and the same goes for the representation of women deputies and women senators. Uzbekistan has made a very significant breakthrough, and today we are among the top 50 countries specifically in terms of gender balance. And the presence of women, this includes directors, kokims, that is in local administrative bodies, as well as ministers, deputy ministers, and many other positions. Already, I believe that gender balance has become very strong and has made a leap forward in recent years.
Well, that really is truly impressive, and I think there is always something to strive for, but I believe this is quite a significant achievement. Overall, it's also very interesting that you have both worked and conducted research in this area. And in general, if we talk about the subject of research, about the publications themselves as such, how do you assess their necessity, for example, for advancing in a scientific career, as well as, say, in a public or political career? And in general, how would you perhaps advise on choosing a research topic? What do you focus on when selecting the subject for your own research? Perhaps our viewers will also find it useful. Someone might be able to take something away for themselves.
Thank you very much. For me, in fact, it is absolutely essential and deeply significant that a scientific topic truly resonates and aligns with the processes and challenges that we are currently facing in reality. If it's international law, then it's more on the broader global stage, directly touching upon, even today, the legislative framework of Uzbekistan, the entire legal system of Uzbekistan. It is that part of international relations and international law. From this particular perspective, when it comes to choosing a topic, and more broadly, when advising young researchers on the selection of their research topics, the focus should be on addressing major challenges, following emerging trends, and being directly involved in the transformation process of our country. Furthermore, it is essential that the models they develop are flexible and adaptable so that they can be successfully implemented within our national context and ultimately lead to tangible and practical results for the nation. These studies should not remain confined to the office. They should not stay only on paper. They need to be more applicable. From the perspective of legal science as a representative of this field, what is essential? Legislative initiatives. These are absolutely necessary changes. Amendments to the regulatory acts of the relevant field under study. This is completely essential for progress. Some valuable and practical recommendations that should be implemented based on the experience of various foreign countries and the thorough, extensive research of international experts. It goes without saying that this symbiosis of public administration, global processes, and the transformation of today's new Uzbekistan, they must coexist in a harmonious way. They should be deeply integrated and embedded in the topics, in comprehensive scientific research, and the most relevant scientific methodologies should be applied today. If we say that today, it is a completely different world than, say, even just 2 short years ago, not going too far back, then already the rise of artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and the growing challenges, have changed the landscape significantly. Global competition, geopolitical significant transformations in the world, they also actively shape and dictate the new trend. That, of course, a researcher must carefully address and definitely include in their subject matter.
But in principle, from what you said, it follows that indeed scientific activity, scientific research, and publications as a whole play an important role. So, for example, can we say that if scientists are not publishing, or for example, a university is not actively engaged in publishing, can we say that in general they remain largely unnoticed and somewhat invisible perhaps to the broader academic and scholarly community?
Oh, thank you. That's actually a very relevant question. It's impossible to exist without publications, I would even put it that way. A scientific researcher wants to make themselves known. The only way to make yourself known and, in general, to share your research or perspective on a particular problem is through writing. If you are studying a problem, then it is absolutely necessary to publish your findings and to publish both in various national sources. By the way, even for professional scientific researchers, I always highly recommend this approach to my students as well. Not only in scientific journals and not only at conferences, but also even in popular publications, that is in newspapers and in various other sources, because it is vitally important to announce that there is now a dedicated researcher working on a particular issue. Government agencies also definitely need to know that there are such qualified experts within the scientific community who can be involved in drafting legislative acts, in participating in working groups, so that this becomes a more practical and applicable process. A win-win situation both for government agencies and for the researcher themselves, who can already, through the lens of practice and by applying various legislative processes, we can observe firsthand how these mechanisms function in reality. He is constantly emphasizing that scientific researchers must always rigorously evaluate every single one of their proposals or recommendations in practice. How exactly is that done? It's a group of respondents They need to be surveyed to determine how ready society is or how prepared various professional experts in this field are. Government agencies, how do they relate to this topic? What problems are identified in general, and also applying various comparative methodologies, comparing with the legislation of other countries. But again, when it comes to publication, international publications are a must. In other words, it is through these academic publications that we truly talk about ourselves. We present our work and our identities to the entire international community, because this is our primary visibility, so to speak, within the global scholarly community. It serves to show the world that such a dedicated scholar actually exists. And it's not just about simply presenting yourself as a scholar or an expert in your field, but rather it is about establishing a lasting legacy. It's even more about the vital task of representing your university, your research center, and even your own country, to demonstrate clearly on the world stage what processes are currently unfolding and developing, and that the country itself is also represented through these important and rigorous scientific publications.
Yes, now we will smoothly move on to the next section, which is actually related to what you just said about universities. Let's talk a little about your foundation. In general, you send students to universities, if I'm not mistaken, from more than 30 countries around the world. And here is the question. Many of these universities are represented in various international rankings. In your opinion, how important is it in general for universities to be included in such rankings? And what is important for universities to improve and enhance? For example, it could be the Hirsch Index and publication activity that you mentioned. Perhaps you can point out some other aspects as well.
Thank you very much. From the perspective of our charitable foundation, I would like to emphasize and point out that today, the foundation serves to prepare highly talented and promising young specialists for the future, for the Republic. And the foundation, under the President of the Republic of Uzbekistan and our head of state, pays special attention specifically to supporting youth, supporting talented young people, and giving them opportunities. They are provided with all kinds of financial support to receive the best education and to learn about new trends in education. And we provide comprehensive support for all areas that are currently highly significant and relevant for training personnel for public service in Uzbekistan. When selecting its nominees, the foundation places a very strong emphasis, of course, on international academic rankings and achievements. This includes the Times Higher Education and the QS system. While I was engaged in a conversation with the CEO and founder of the QS ranking system, I came to the realization that there is actually a profound and intricate philosophy embedded in university rankings, I would say. It's not just about specific underlying factors or requirements for universities. It's a more profound and thorough approach, even from a detailed methodological perspective. It is precisely the QS system that is built on a profound methodology, scientific research, and a systematic approach to selecting universities. Here, of course, a very important factor for being recognized and making it into the rankings, especially the top university rankings, is always scientific research and scientific publications. Therefore, for any given university, let's say, even from the university's own perspective, if they want to get into the rankings, there must definitely be in-depth scientific research. These are scientific publications, again, international publications that are visible in the Scopus system, that are recognized, as well as the Hirsch Index of the university's faculty and teaching staff. All of this helps significantly elevate and promote the university to a much higher level. It helps the university find like-minded strategic partners. It helps universities negotiate more effectively on completely equal terms. This helps to understand the potential of a particular university and, in general, of the faculty and teaching staff. These publications help to identify groups of researchers who, as of today, academic research should not be limited by either the university or the country. Today, they need to be at a more global level. The very same bioengineering specialized fields and also the same chemistry specialized fields, they need to be a bit more how should I put it? In partnership. Today, it is impossible to conduct research alone. Let's even go back to jurisprudence. We don't do this only within my academic university institution or the charitable foundation I represent, or even just within the borders of this country. Today, we are actively exploring various ways to improve people's lives, to see what significant reforms and advancements are taking place in the state. What is particularly heartening and encouraging to me is that our president pays special attention to scientific research and dedicates a significant amount of specific focus to representatives of science. He specifically addresses the members of the scientific community in his proposed institutional reforms. That is, those specific academic studies, the identification of new foreign models, and so on. In developing countries, what trends exist, how to strengthen them, how to improve them. Every one of these systems operating within the country also, in a way, depend on these detailed scientific studies.
And if we discuss the process of selecting candidates, specifically for your programs, what would you say is the main priority? And if, for example, we are talking about a candidate, a student who wants to apply, and for example, at this stage, they don't yet have significant experience, say, in publications, but you see potential. In theory, it's possible. And then there's, for example, a contestant, an applicant who is already actively engaged. So who would you choose in this situation? Who would the foundation give preference to? And how is this process organized for you?
Thank you. And I would like to note that today the foundation supports various educational programs. These include bachelor's, master's, and doctoral programs. Of course, it depends on the nominee who is applying for a particular program. For candidates applying for education in the bachelor's system, there are slightly different approaches. Here, of course, we do not require such strict criteria as a scientific approach or research. Instead, we carefully evaluate the relevance of the field, the professional abilities of each candidate, their stress resistance, their psychological state, their personal ties to the country, their desire to contribute to the nation's growth, and their overall potential for long-term development in a particular field. When it comes to master's and doctoral programs, yes, here we pay much closer attention to the candidates' scientific and research potential. What research can they present, what topics they plan to pursue, or in which specific area of their master's studies they intend to develop. In the master's program, we pay particular attention. If we look at it from the perspective of law, for example, it's not just about general international law anymore. Here, the focus shifts more towards, for instance, intellectual property law, which is very important today in the process of Uzbekistan's successful accession to the WTO. A variety of other key areas will be expanded here, with significant attention paid to government structures, the reformation of those same state bodies, or even the complex adaptation of Uzbekistan's national legislative frameworks to the processes of the World Trade Organization. From this perspective, we place a very special emphasis on ensuring that our master's candidates focus their research on more specialized fields. And if this is supported by a rigorous scientific foundation, where the master's program places a significant emphasis, especially if it is a full 2-year program, on the detailed writing of a thesis, then yes, here scientific approaches, the candidate's proven ability in academic writing, and also at the doctoral level, first and foremost, their publications in the specific field where they have already made some notable progress, their properly and carefully chosen topic, how adaptable that topic is to a particular geographic area in Uzbekistan, and then the specific methodological approach they intend to take, as well as the overall relevance of the topic for development and reforms that align with the ideas and ideology of the new Uzbekistan, all become important.
Yes. Please tell me about your background. In general, one of the foundation's tasks, as I understand it, is to train personnel who study abroad, then return to Uzbekistan and contribute to the country's development as much as possible. I am curious about this. Do you have any specific systems, approaches, or specialized tools? I'm not entirely sure how best to put it, so maybe you can clarify this for me, to monitor, let's say, the return of a candidate to a participant, and then to assess their subsequent professional activities? Specifically, how effectively are they able to implement the knowledge they gained while studying abroad in the context of Uzbekistan?
This is the most relevant topic of, let's say, this year of the Foundation's transformation. Last year, on May 5th, the Foundation was reorganized by a presidential decree, and now we are paying special attention to, I would put it this way, as of today, the Foundation positions itself as part of Uzbekistan's educational system, in the sense that we support young people in studying abroad at top universities. We are actively supporting our Uzbek national universities in the process of adaptation, for implementing double degree programs and dual programs to which our president pays special attention. To put it more clearly, these are, how should I put it, prestigious double degree academic programs established between international universities and top tier institutions. Here, we serve as a vital platform for bringing together these top global universities and our own Uzbek universities for collaborative growth. From our perspective, this initiative means providing essential financial support for a particular program and also indirect support of national universities, attracting distinguished professors and talented young foreigners to study at Uzbek universities. From another point of view, the fund today acts as a kind of highly specialized strategic department for the professional training and retraining of personnel. Here, once again, we are talking about the successful return of our scholarship recipients and their important work within government structures. These are internships for civil servants, representatives of universities, research centers, and think tanks. That is, here we also pay special attention to their retraining. Returning to the tools, when it comes to the return of scholarship recipients and all participants of internships and various programs, a four-party agreement is drawn up here between the scholarship recipient, the fund, their future employer, and the financial guarantor system. This tool was included here so that both the candidate and the scholarship recipient who left would have a strong and meaningful connection to the country, a predetermined place of work, the specific area where he would be arriving, and public service opportunities in a variety of professional fields would already be waiting for him. There is also a comprehensive support tool designed for the youth located here. The state has now even introduced such financial support. Young people who return after studying at universities receive an additional bonus, a financial supplement to their salary. So this also encourages young people to come back, work in the system, and receive a salary as well. I would say that today it is very high, and if you look at it, a young specialist who has returned from studying at a university receives a salary on par with department heads. This is how significant the financial...
It's impressive, really, yes.
There is also a guaranteed employment opportunity without any further selection. They go straight into public service. A special exclusive golden reserve of civil servants has been created at the agency, where our scholarship recipients are included as the golden reserve of public service. We will actively monitor them to ensure they receive some kind of meaningful promotion in their public service careers. This applies from the initial entry-level positions up to, well, as we often say, yes, the very highest levels of leadership, and also up to managerial positions. I would like to note that, as of today, more than 34% of our scholarship recipients already hold managerial positions within the public service system. Also, when we look closely at the specific mechanism of their involvement, so to speak, with the country, it is important for us to clearly note that today we are not just sending our talented young people abroad, but we have also implemented a comprehensive KPI performance system even for ourselves, specifically for those who are currently studying abroad in various programs. We observe and continuously monitor, first of all, which credits they take so that it is more adapted to their system. We guide them, help them, and also provide them with our professional advice while staying in constant contact with our scholarship recipients. This also includes their overall academic performance, their additional social projects aimed at the further development of our Uzbekistan, and, how should I put it, how they spend their vacation period during the long break between semesters. It also involves internships in various government institutions, so that they can already understand where they will return to, or in the future, which specific credits and subjects they should take, so that everything can be adapted accordingly. And then we introduced a KPI system to measure everything. We also closely and actively monitor our scholarship recipients who have already returned home and are currently working in their fields. And since the scholarship recipients working in public service range from engineers and skilled IT specialists to teachers, expert lawyers, and various other public service representatives who serve the community. So here we have a wide and diverse range of academic fields spanning from the rigorous exact sciences to the social sciences. Within this context, we can see that we have implemented a structured system where we try to carefully analyze the overall return on the investment that the state made in their education, and subsequently to apply those findings in more adaptable, dynamic, and evolving economic indicators. In other words, every scholarship recipient who has received an education is already producing significant results in one way or another. These results can be directly applied in economic terms, because a scholarship recipient who studied the field of cardiology, specifically pediatric cardiology, performs complex cardiac surgeries for children suffering specifically from heart problems. If previously these patients had to go abroad, for example, for these expensive surgeries, today these operations are performed in Uzbekistan. This saves money for our patients, for our population, it benefits our people, and this is also an economic indicator. Likewise, in any field, including education, the number of young people they have trained in a particular area, this also applies to the mining and metallurgical sector. We see that attracting investments, increasing company productivity, and bringing it to a higher level of partnership are also achievements among the scholarship recipients, measurable through KPIs and reflected more in economic indicators.
Honestly, the level of structure here is impressive. It was really interesting to hear from the inside and understand how you control all of this. And it's truly encouraging that this is actually bearing fruit. You also mentioned, yes, about providing support and preparing scholarship recipients. So does the foundation, for example, directly participate in their preparation? Well, since today we're talking about science and publications, let's say about support in professional development, specifically in the context of scientific publications. How do you assess whether there are enough resources overall to provide this training if, for example, you are directly involved in it? Perhaps something is lacking, maybe some infrastructure is missing, and overall, tell me, does the foundation in general consider the option of cooperating with external organizations that could assist in this area, that is, help train scholarship recipients in the context of publication and scientific activities?
You are absolutely right. And today the foundation is creating a special ecosystem, specifically an educational one, for the training of highly skilled personnel. And in this context, I would like to note that today, in the education system, the foundation is also trying to make its own contribution to the development of the education system in Uzbekistan. This also includes attracting international partners and bringing in professors. And here, of course, the context we are discussing today is essential to our conversation: scientific research, the scientific potential of universities, and the strategic scientific focus. Today, we also strategically position our organization as a central platform that is not just a financial lever, but serves much more as a comprehensive educational and advanced scientific hub for all of Uzbekistan. We are actively working to support and further develop our national educational system, and our higher education institutions, so that they can successfully enter and compete within global ranking systems. In this direction, we regularly organize and host conferences, and we actively involve expert scientists for the various technological developments and projects that we are currently working on. We are actively striving to serve as a comprehensive platform for development, to listen closely to our scientists and experts, to understand exactly what is required in today's world, how we can help, and what kind of support we can provide, both financial on the one hand, but also scientific and educational support, so that we can be an integral part of the system, so that we can be the main platform for connecting scientific centers, higher educational institutions, and scientists. We have successfully organized and held several conferences throughout this entire year. We brought together a diverse group of highly skilled experts at the same table to exchange their unique perspectives and get to know each other better. All of our strategic partnerships with foreign universities and international representatives are always based on finding the right partner among universities and the broader scientific and academic community for the international community, so that we can serve as a supportive and collaborative helping hand, so to speak, acting as a primary driver for these important global relationships.
Well, in fact, this really sounds very powerful and promising, and I wish you nothing but success so that you can continue to develop in this direction that you and the foundation as a whole have chosen. And we are now coming to the end of our interview, and there is this final question. It is more philosophical in nature, but perhaps you will be able to make it more specific. I'm interested in general in your opinion, how can the foundation as a whole influence, let's say, the dynamics of Uzbekistan's development over the next 10 years, for example? And overall, what would you like to say to young researchers, those who are watching us right now? What recommendations would you give them for the future, for their future activities?
Today, the foundation is developing precisely in line with the current realities of the new Uzbekistan, while keeping pace with the times. Uzbekistan's development strategy 2030 clearly outlines our starting points and the important goals we are striving to achieve. And certainly, in the development of the new Uzbekistan, the foundation is an integral part of this process and does its utmost to support all government structures in this direction. Of course, the focus here is on the tasks set by the president, particularly on the development of human capital. In this regard, the foundation is specifically working in this direction across various areas. So what exactly are we doing? We conduct detailed needs assessments and study our government structures and agencies, specifically in terms of personnel policy. As of today, for example, if we look at the agricultural sector, it is no longer just about agronomists or biologists. It is increasingly about engineers, food security, and the use of artificial intelligence. To put it in a slightly different way, there are now various emerging trends and evolving needs here. And the foundation definitely places high priority and special attention on meeting these needs and fulfilling the various tasks assigned to us in many different fields, specifically through the comprehensive development of our human capital. In this regard, we are guided by the objectives of Uzbekistan's comprehensive development strategy, which, as it stands today, specifically envisions where the head of state sees Uzbekistan in the near future, by 2030, for example, as well as further into the country's long-term development. That is precisely why we work specifically in line with the tasks set by the head of state and the current trends of state policy. And we continuously strive in every possible way to be fully involved in the process, both as active participants and as partners supporting various sectors. As advice to young scientists, and really to anyone who has entered a particular educational field, I would certainly like to recommend never being afraid to pursue science. Because if I look back more than 20 years ago when I took my first step into science, It was often considered not particularly relevant, it was not financially supported or encouraged, and it was, back in those days, if you looked at what your peers were doing, it was considered unfashionable and seemed quite dull. But what I truly want to emphasize to you is that it was precisely following that scientific path that shaped me into the person I am today. And as a professional scientist, I can certainly say that it is very important to have this kind of solid scientific background. It truly helps you develop not only in the academic scientific field, but even in your daily practice, and especially in public service. Whenever I have to make decisions, my scientific background helps me approach them from a methodological perspective. This allows me to tackle each task more scientifically by analyzing each component, ensuring that I can make the right decisions based on a careful analysis of various factors. I firmly believe that science has provided me with these very essential tools for success. And for all the young people who are now choosing their own unique path in the world of science, please don't ever be afraid of the challenges or the ambitious tasks you set for yourselves. Be much bolder in your pursuits, choose exciting new trends, and pay close attention to everything that's happening on the vast global stage. Make it a priority to publish your work, read as many scientific studies as possible, and constantly learn new languages so you can read original sources in their native form. Doing this will ensure that you can be more, how should I put it, more on an equal partnership level with the leading experts and renowned scientists all around the world. Because science, well, it is truly a calling for life, and it requires our full dedication. It gives you a significant kind of boost throughout your entire life. Even the small everyday decisions you make, I truly believe, are deeply influenced by science. They become much deeper, more thoughtful, and more rational, which ultimately helps you make the right choices in various areas and aspects of your daily life. So I sincerely wish everyone could find that, how to say, that deep sense of passion.
Passion, yes, 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 yes.
To pursue a career in science and love the work you've started.
Honestly, your words are very motivating. It makes me want to go right now and write something, maybe a scientific article. You know, I'm sure that everything you've just said and everything you've shared in this interview overall, I'm confident it will be very useful for all our viewers, since you talked about the practical side of things. That's extremely valuable and helpful, I'm sure, and I really hope that thanks to this interview, you might even get some new applicants for the program. That's it. Overall, I want to wish your foundation continued growth and prosperity, so that you continue the wonderful work you do, developing science in Uzbekistan and Uzbekistan as a whole, and keep reaching even greater new heights. And I'm also very grateful to you for deciding to come to our interview today.
I'm very grateful to you for this opportunity to share. Of course, I wouldn't say that this has fully revealed the scientific potential or the international trust that we see today towards our country, towards Uzbekistan. I would like to note, taking advantage of your platform for the international community, that Uzbekistan is now very open, transparent, and enjoys a relationship of trust at the global level, on the global political stage. We can also confidently address the scientific community and universities, and we will be very happy to support this international partnership among higher education institutions, scientists, and researchers. And we will be truly delighted to make our own contribution to the cause. Therefore, I wish to express my sincere thanks for this opportunity, even if it was just a modest part. I hope I haven't forgotten anything important. And I simply wouldn't want to end this conversation with you. Today it was such a constructive, open dialogue, and I also wish you great success.
Thank you very much.